master of the house and some of the guests went out of the hut and offered libations before the bear's cage. A few drops were presented to the bear in a saucer, which he at once upset. Then the women and girls danced around the cage, their faces turned towards it, their knees slightly bent, rising and hopping on their toes. As they danced, they clapped their hands and sang a monotonous song. The housewife and a few old women, who might have nursed many bears, danced tearfully, stretching out their arms to the bear and addressing it in terms of endearment. The young folks were less affected. They laughed as well as sang. Disturbed by the noise, the bear began to rush about his cage and howl lamentably. Next libations were offered at the inabos, or sacred wands which stand outside of an Aino hut. These wands are about a couple of feet high, and are whittled at the top into spiral shavings. 5 new wands with bamboo leaves attached to them had been set up for the festival. This is regularly done when a bear is killed. The leaves mean that the animal may come to life again. Then the bear was let out of the cage, a rope was thrown around his neck, and he was led about in the neighborhood of the hut. While this was being done, the men, headed by a chief, shot at the beast with arrows tipped with wooden buttons. Dr. Shebe had to do so also. Then the bear was taken before the sacred wands, a stick was put in his mouth, 9 men knelt on him and pressed his neck against a beam. In 5 minutes the animal had expired without uttering a sound. Meantime the women and girls had taken posts behind the men, where they danced, lamenting and beating the men who were killing the bear. The bear's carcass was next placed on the mat before the sacred wands, and the sword and the quiver, taken from the wands, were hung round the beast's neck. Being a she-bear, it was also adorned with a necklace and earrings. Then food and drink were offered to it in the shape of millet broth, millet cakes, and a pot of sake. The men now sat down on mats before the dead bear, offered libations to it, and drank deep. Meanwhile the women and girls had laid aside all marks of sorrow, and danced merrily, none more merrily than the old women. When the mirth was at its height, 2 young Aino, who had let the bear out of his cage, mounted the roof of the hut and threw cakes of millet among the company, who all scrambled for them without distinction of age or sex. The bear was next skinned and disembowelled, and the trunk severed from the head, to which the skin was left hanging. The blood, caught in cups, was eagerly swallowed by the men. None of the women or children appeared to drink the blood, though custom did not forbid them to do so. The liver was cut in small pieces and eaten raw, with salt, the women and children getting their share. The flesh and the rest of the vitals were taken into the house to be kept till the next day but one, and then to be divided among the persons who had been present at the feast. Blood and liver were offered to Dr. Shebe. While the bear was being disembowelled, the women and girls danced the same dance which they had danced at the beginning, not however round the cage, but in front of the sacred wands. At this dance the old women, who had been merry a moment before, again shed tears freely. After the brain had been extracted from the bear's head and swallowed with salt, the skull detached from the skin was hung on a pole beside the sacred wands. The stick with which the bear had been gagged was also fastened to the pole, and so were the sword and quiver which had been hung on the carcass. The latter were removed in about an hour, but the rest remained standing. The whole company, men and women, danced noisily before the pole, and another drinking bout, in which the women joined, closed the festival. Perhaps the first published account of the bear feast of the Aino is one which was given to the world by a Japanese writer in 1652. It has been translated into French and runs thus: When they find a young bear, they bring it home, and the wife suckles it. When it is grown, they feed it with fish and fowl and kill it in winter for the sake of the liver, which they esteem an antidote to poison, the worms, colic, and disorders of the stomach. It is of a very bitter taste, and is good for nothing if the bear has been killed in summer. This butchery begins in the first Japanese month. For this purpose they put the animal's head between 2 long poles, which are squeezed together by 50 or 60 people, both men and women. When the bear is dead, they eat his flesh, keep the liver as a medicine, and sell the skin, which is black and commonly 6 feet long, but the longest measure 12 feet. As soon as he is skinned, the persons who nourish the beast begin to bewail him, Afterwards they make little cakes to regale those who helped them. The Aino of Sakhalin rear bear cubs and kill them with similar ceremonies. We are told that they do not look upon the bear as a god, but only as a messenger whom they dispatch with various commissions to the god of the forest. The animal is kept for about 2 years in a cage, and then killed at a festival, which always takes place in winter and at night. The day before the sacrifice is devoted to lamentation, all women relieving each other in the duty of weeping and groaning in front of the bear's cage. Then about the middle of the night, or very early in the morning, an orator makes a long speech to the beast, reminding him how they have taken care of him, and fed him well, and bathed him in the river, and made him warm and comfortable. Now, he proceeds, we are holding a great festival in your honor. Be not afraid, we will not hurt you. We will only kill you, and send you to the god of the forest who loves you. We are about to offer you a good dinner, the best you have ever eaten amongst us, and we will all weep for you together. The Aino who will kill you is the best shot amongst us. There he is, he weeps and asks your forgiveness. You will feel almost nothing, it will be done so quickly. We cannot feed you always, as you will understand. We have done enough for you. It is now your turn to sacrifice yourself for us. We will ask God to send us, for the winter, plenty of otters and sables, and for the summer, seals and fish in abundance. Do not forget our messages. We love you much, and our children will never forget you. When the bear has partaken of his last meal amid the general emotion of the spectators, the old women weeping afresh and the men uttering stifled cries, he is strapped, not without difficulty and danger, and being let out of the cage is led on a leash or dragged, according to the state of his temper, thrice round his cage, then round his master's house, and lastly round the house of the orator. Thereupon he is tied up to a tree, which is decked with sacred whittle sticks enow of the usual sort, and the orator again addresses him in a long harangue, which sometimes lasts till the day is beginning to break. Remember, he cries, remember! I remind you of your whole life, and of the services we have rendered you. It is now for you to do your duty. Do not forget what I have asked of you. You will tell the gods to give us riches, that our hunters may return from the forest laden with rare furs and animals good to eat, that our fishers may find troops of seals on the shore and in the sea, and that their nets may crack under the weight of the fish. We have no hope but in you. The evil spirits laugh at us, and too often they are unfavourable and malignant to us, but they will bow before you. We have given you good food and joy and health. Now we kill you in order that you may return to send riches to us and to our children. To this discourse the bear, more and more surly and agitated, listens without conviction. Round and round the tree he paces and howls lamentably, till, just as the first beams of the rising sun light up the scene, an archer speeds an arrow to his heart. No sooner has he done so, than the marksman throws away his bow and flings himself on the ground, and the old men and women do the same, weeping and sobbing. Then they offer the dead beast a repast of rice and wild potatoes, and having spoken to him in terms of pity and thanked him for what he has done and suffered, they cut off his head and paws and keep them as sacred things. A banquet on the flesh and blood of the bear follows. Women were formerly excluded from it, but now they share with the men. The blood is drunk warm by all present. The flesh is boiled. Custom forbids it to be roasted. And as the relics of the bear may not enter the house by the door, the Aino houses in Sakhalin have no windows. A man gets up on the roof and lets the flesh, the head, and the skin down through the smoke hole. Rice and wild potatoes are then offered to the head, and a pipe, tobacco, and matches are considerately placed beside it. Custom requires that the guests should eat up the whole animal before they depart. The use of salt and pepper at the meal is forbidden, and no morsel of the flesh may be given to the dogs. When the banquet is over, the head is carried away into the depths of the forest and deposited on a heap of bear skulls, the bleached and mouldering relics of similar festivals in the past. The Gilyaks, a Tungusian people of eastern Siberia, hold a bear festival of the same sort once a year in January. The bear is the object of the most refined solicitude of an entire village, and plays the chief part in the religious ceremonies. An old she-bear is shot and her cub is reared, but not suckled in the village. When the bear is big enough, he is taken from his cage and dragged through the village. But first they lead him to the bank of the river, for this is believed to ensure